Before we proceed further, let me run you through some housekeeping rules. Speakers are requested to keep their microphones off when they are not speaking to ensure good audio quality for everyone. You're also encouraged to switch on your cameras, especially when you're speaking, if your network allows to do that without any disruptions. We also invite questions from our audience and colleagues at the end or as the session goes. Please feel free to write them in the Q&A box on the right side. Speakers are requested to keep the chat box open in the window. You can also indicate that you want to speak by clicking the raise hand tab on the right side of the chat window. The session will also be telecasted live on SDPI's and Rabies Free Pakistan's Facebook page. For those watching us on Facebook Live, please write your questions in the chat there. They will be conveyed to the speakers through our team. The seminar will be recorded and the video will be posted online. You're welcome to revisit the discussion later and feel free to share it with your network. Views expressed during all webinars are the views of respected speakers and do not represent the policy of the organization. Thank you. I now briefly introduce you to our panel for today. While Mr. Hamza Shafqaat, Deputy Commissioner Islamabad, will be joining us for closing remarks, we have Mr. Shehryar Arif, Additional Deputy Commissioner Islamabad, on board with us for the panel today. Thank you, Mr. Arif, for your time and interest in the subject. Dr. Imran Khalid, Director Governance and Policy Worldwide Fund for Nature, or WWF Pakistan, is with us today. Dr. Ghani, Ikram, homeopathic consultant and founder Strays Home and Rehab Shelter, will be joining us as well. Mr. Faraz, Saeed, Manager Rabies Free Pakistan, and Ms. Faryal Nawaz, animal rights activist, is on board with us as well. Ms. Mahrukh, Qizalbash, Policy Research Consultant, Freshminds UK, will be presenting a paper on apathy towards animal rights in Pakistan, what's need to be done. Thank you all for joining us today. Aggression towards stray animals, especially dogs, is a common practice in the country and not something that is actually discouraged by many people, including the authorities, be they religious or those in administration. It is a common practice for municipal authorities to cull thousands of stray dogs across the country on the pretext of aggression and carrying diseases. But despite the mass killing sprees, there is no end to the problem. And rabies is still very much prevalent in the country. Dogs' population keep on increasing, and so does the people's resentment for them. But it's not about a solution to the problem only. It's also about peaceful coexistence and humane handling of the creature of God. Example of which we see abroad, and especially in a country with similar social and religious construct as Pakistan, Turkey. What further obligates the country to alter its ways is the fact that Pakistan is a member of OIE. The guiding principles that inform the OIE's work on the welfare of terrestrial animals include the 5 freedoms, which are freedom from hunger, malnutrition and thirst, freedom from fear and distress, freedom from heat stress or physical discomfort, freedom from pain, injury and disease, and freedom to express normal patterns of behavior. Last year, Ms. Mahrukh and I conducted the study on apathy towards animal rights in Pakistan, what needs to be done, where we did a comparative analysis of animal rights in different countries with similar social and religious constructs. So I request Ms. Mahrukh to present the findings and the policy recommendations we compiled. Over to you, Mahrukh.
Thank you for the introduction, Ayesha, and everyone, please welcome to the webinar. I'll be sharing my screen shortly and starting my presentation on the paper Ayesha and I wrote. Just one second, let me share my screen. All right, here we go. All right. So as Ayesha mentioned, every year more than 50,000 stray dogs are culled across Pakistan, majority of which are done by municipal authorities, with main justifications being that there's fear of these dogs carrying diseases or biting humans. So to get a perspective into this, Ayesha and I looked into not just stray dogs, which will be the focus of this seminar, but all animals across Pakistan, and the way Pakistan can oblige its OIE standards and obligations as it is a member state. So to do this, we looked across a variety of countries with similar, as Ayesha mentioned, socioeconomic backgrounds as Pakistan, to see what practices they have adopted, which can be potential alternative practices to dispose of problems caused by stray animals in Pakistan. So sorry. Yeah, so as Ayesha mentioned, we looked mainly at the OIE's five main freedoms to see how this informs not only policies and legislations outside Pakistan, but how Pakistan can also adopt these into its own legislation to make sure that it is fulfilling its obligations as a member state. So as Ayesha mentioned, these five are freedom from hunger, malnutrition, thirst, freedom from fear and distress, freedom from heat stress or physical discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, and disease, and freedom to express normal patterns of behavior. Now, in the interest of time, I will be going directly to policy recommendations and not looking at what the other countries that we looked at are doing, but these are the policy recommendations that we extracted that had the best results across these countries, and we thought were best suited to fit the unique political, socioeconomic condition of Pakistan. Now, the first one being a special body for animal welfare. Now, it was established that the government needs to have a special body to protect animal rights, as well as regularly review and reform the laws and regulations related to animal rights, whether they're in captivity, in wild, or on the streets. Secondly, and most importantly, animals should be declared as sentient beings. This is the first step many countries have taken to ensure that animals get rights, which is by declaring that these are animals that essentially can feel. So a vast array of scientific evidence provides that at minimum, all vertebrates, crustaceans, and a variety of different animals are sentient. There's need to formally acknowledge these animals as sentient beings in Pakistan and provide a legal act to further substantiate other considerations for national animal welfare policies. Now, we also have to ensure that all five freedoms of the OIE are also being met in Pakistan. So at a state level, there's a need to redefine animal welfare in line with the OIE, which explicitly mentions the five freedoms to grant protection to animals in the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, which at the time is not meeting the current standards that Pakistan needs to meet because as a member state. Fourthly, the trap, neuter, vaccinate, and release scheme instead of culling. So this, we have seen as with Pakistan as a case study that culling is not the way to actually address problems that Pakistan is facing, in particular with street dogs. Sterilization has significantly proven to reduce, if not stop, aggressive behavior in dogs. It also reduces public fear and health concerns as these dogs will be vaccinated and tagged as such, and therefore unable to spread disease, and also provide that information to the public that these animals have been treated as such. So then fifthly, there's the need, as Ayesha mentioned, to create harmony between the public and stray dogs. And to have this peaceful coexistence and harmony between different factions of society and street animals, there needs to be a nationwide ban on culling. And this culling should be replaced with the max vaccination, sterilization, collaring, and tagging of street animals to ensure public health and safety for both humans and animals. As vaccination is the only effective way to eliminate rabies and other transmittable diseases from humans to animals, we need to have mobile vehicles for vaccinating and chemically castrating dogs, as well as government veterinary centers set up to spay female dogs to control population growth. And lastly, declaring street animals as community animals. So knowing that we have to have protection in the form of law to declare street animals as community animals would put penalties on beating, killing, displacing, or dislocating street animals from their inherent localities, which we know is a huge problem that Pakistan is facing, and in particular, Islamabad also faces. Just going on to my next slide, the further recommendations that Ayesha and I had were that the government needs to encourage other corporations to cover community animals, for example, in corporate social responsibility projects. This would also reduce the burden on just government from taking responsibility of these community animals, and also place a greater responsibility on the social role of the public to contribute, especially in terms of corporations, to contribute towards mass vaccination campaigns, TNR campaigns, installing shelters and food stations for community animals, and also they will be responsible for any treatments in case of accidents or injuries or any health conditions. Such encouragement will then not only lessen the burden on the government, but also help a more productive and constructive way for the community and for corporations to get involved in the health and safety of street animals. Another important thing that needs to be tackled is public awareness on this topic. And for that, we had a series of recommendations, which I have condensed into a main one, which was preaching kindness or establishing a duty of care for pet owners and farmers. So a duty of care is described as not only taking care of, for example, if you are using an animal for labor or have a pet, then there are certain duties placed upon you as a pet owner or as a farmer or whatever role you have taken to make sure that that animal is not only taken care of, but also neutered and vaccinated in order to help safety, for not only as a public responsibility, but also for that animal in particular. Such a duty of care is usually enshrined in law, but Pakistan does not have that yet, and we strongly encourage that is introduced. Furthermore, introducing animal welfare into national school curriculums and running public awareness campaigns would help tackle societal fear and apathy towards animals. And lastly, there are various scriptures of various instructions and examples of importance towards kindness towards animals that should be highlighted through the media and public awareness campaigns to clarify any misinformed stereotypes around certain animals being impure or not something unwanted in society. And there are various examples within different religious scriptures that do preach kindness to animals, which should be used to highlight the importance of this cause in order to counteract negative public perceptions of these animals. This can also be done through schools, through mandates to promote kindness and to arrange visits of students to shelters and organizing lectures and sessions with animal rights activists in order to tackle this problem through different generations as well. Ayesha and I also had a specific policy recommendation, which we encouraged the municipality to actually be in charge of creating shelters and food stations for dogs in areas such as public parks or greenbelts in Islamabad to help promote this community animal perspective. We have further instructions as well, recommendations as well within our paper, but those were more targeted towards farm animals and more different legalizations. So I tried to keep this compact just to street dogs. And that is the end of my presentation. I would welcome any comments or questions from the audience, but that is the extent.
Thank you so much, Mahrukh, for the very brief and a very apt summary of the policy recommendations we made. Coming towards Faryal. Faryal, activists are the first respondents to cases of animal cruelty, and they mostly either raise funds from their circle or as a last resort use their own resources to help the helpless, which is not a very sustainable way to go about it, to be honest. What could be a more concrete solution to helping out the animals?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me over on this discussion. I really like the findings of Mahrukh's research and yours as well, because you guys have basically summarized whatever we talked about a year ago, all the things that are rampant in our society at the moment and all the challenges that we face on ground, being the first respondents towards any stray crisis that are in Pakistan. So like we discussed last year as well, Ayesha, this problem is twofold. So there is something that needs to be done on an individual level, and then there's something that needs to be substantiated with the help of the legislation that we have by the government level. So like you rightfully pointed out, there needs to be a community setup where you treat them as a part of the community, you give them rights as sentient beings, you make sure that they are treated with kindness, but then there is also this part which is substantiated by certain legislations that are in place, which ensure that if anybody does not abide by them, there are certain rules to punish these things, to legalize these things, to make sure that they don't go unattended. For which we need the government support in terms of coming up with policies and in terms of making sure that the rules that are in place already, however few they are thoroughly followed through. There is no lapse in that. And also, certain interventions, such as you mentioned, making them a part of your curriculum, making them a part of the daily discussions at home, making them a part of, as a society, how we can inculcate these values and, ingrain that seed of empathy in our generation. So the first problem that we face in this aspect is that it is not sustainable, as you rightly pointed out, because due to inflation and all these other costs that are incurred in animal rescue anymore. So these things have become very expensive for us to even carry out, no matter how we want to continue with these services, because they're usually individual based, coming out of our own pocket or from people which are in our circle. Then secondly, the problem is that even if we have the moratoriums in place, even if we have the laws which have been passed by the government, nobody abides by them. So that's where the individual level, and that's where the that the systemic problem where everyone does not take it seriously comes from, that anybody can just pick up a phone and they can call and they can say that we need this particular dog or this particular pack culled, and they would just go and poison it, even though there are rules against that, especially in Islamabad. So it is a problem of a mindset, and it is a problem of furthering the work and cause of a few people like you and I and others who are doing on different individual society level, different organization, private public sector ki jis tarah ki ho gayi hai, jis tarah Rabies Free Pakistan is working, different animal rescuers, activists in different entities which are collaborating or working individually in their own humble capacity to make it work. We cannot do that unless we are backed by these externalities, such as supportive and conducive environment within our society, as well as the legislations which can be enforced and should be a part of our mandate and should be a part of any society, any decent society where these animals can live a normal life. So this is primarily why we urge the government, and we urge the DC office, and we urge all these entities which are responsible for enforcing these laws within our society, within our particular area, to help us further the cause, because individually we cannot do this. Individually, it's not sustainable. Individually, you can only cause a tiny ripple, but it cannot be like, an entire effect, the whole snowball effect that we want out of it. So it has to be a collective effort. It has to be something for which private public bodies, researchers, academics, different legislations, different law bodies, different governing bodies, they all come together so that collaborate together we can induce this thing and inculcate this thing in our society. Because let's face it, Ayesha, there are not many people who actually understand the problem at hand. There are very many people out there who have a genuine fear of these animals. So it's not just about me doing my work and then expecting the government to support my work and then it's all hunky-dory. No, there's a fear of animals, stray animals in our society. There is a problem of religious misinterpretation in our society where it is actually used as a tool against a kindness towards animals. So there is that, and then there is this lack of empathy as a general in our society. So these are some ground realities that we need to work with, and we are currently working with day to day. But for this, everybody needs to come together to make it possible and make it conducive, like in your suggestions that you rightly pointed out.
Thank you. Indeed, everyone has to come together for it. Faraz is with us from RFP, and RFP has presented a workable model for us all by running a mass TNVR campaigns in Karachi. And if I may take the liberty to say, or it could be my wishful thinking, Islamabad's dynamics are obviously different, much favorable, maybe. What can be the possible resources for mass-scale implementation of TNVR in the city for us? Your mic is mute.
Thank you, Ayesha. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's an honor to be talking with such a prestigious panel, mashallah. So just going to jump right into it, to the question on how we can make this more accessible and more quickly to spread across Islamabad, Karachi, Pakistan, as you are discussing. The idea is, as both of the previous speakers have pointed out, the mindset is very important. This is something that I'm very passionate about when I talk to anyone, whether it's a resident in Ibrahim Edri, where we operate, or it's a person who I'm talking to from a distinguished institution who doesn't understand why these stray dogs can't be removed. Thoda sa piche jaunga main about the whole premise of why we do TNVR. When dogs are removed in a very unfortunate fashion from a certain area, what you do is that you allow essentially other dogs from the surrounding areas to enter that area. So that process never works. Because these guys are scavengers, the life of a dog means something. They can go miles looking for food, looking for a pack, so they will always come back to that area. The way TNVR helps is that ensures that the dogs that are in your area, they are neutered, they are vaccinated, and they are released back in the same area, so other dogs, first of all, don't enter. Similarly, the dogs that are already there, when they're operating in that, when they're roaming around that area, they're keeping other dogs out, and also we're ensuring that the dogs that are there are capable of coexisting. And that coexisting message is what I have been pushing through RFP for the past couple of months, what my manager was also here, Dr. Vijaya Javed, project director of Rabies Free Pakistan, we constantly push this message out that we need to be able to coexist one way or another. How to make this really spread out is by changing the mindset and opening up people's mind to the idea that these dogs, which I believe my numbers are close to 2.5 million in Sindh, and more than half of that is actually in Karachi alone. And these numbers are going to exponentially grow. One female dog can have up to 3 litters every year. That's 36 puppies if we get the average right per year. So these numbers are going to keep going up, but unfortunately, the actions that our communities are opting for are very unhealthy practices towards these stray dogs, and their only crime is that they were born. So how to go about it is to change the mindset, do community engagement. As Mahrukh mentioned that you guys had discussed a school-based idea. That's a great idea. That's something that we are also working on, trying to get into the really, the children, change the mindset of the younger generation that's actually the ones that's unfortunately most affected by them, by the stray dogs. So we need to get into the community engagement programs. We need institutions, we need organizations to come and step forward. We need the government for sure, because on the mass level, you cannot do this without the support. But we need organizations, private companies to come in and to ask for us to explain it to their employees, their factory workers, their people who are actually on the front lines against the stray dogs, where they're most predominantly found. So we would like to definitely have a shift in the mindset. We have many examples from Sri Lanka to Mexico to Turkey. They all have opted for the One Health approach, and they have vaccinated, they have neutered, and they've ensured a very strong control on the rabies problem. In Pakistan, just I think last year we had around 5,000 cases of rabies, and people don't come forward when the dog bites them, and that they only have 72 hours, and then it becomes into that whole issue ki kutte ne kaata maro, and then with one dog bite you have 50 unfortunate stray dogs who were just maybe minding their own business in one way or another were removed. So in order to really drive this, we need to have a very thoughtful approach, a methodic approach of how to get into the mindset of the younger generation. The older generation I still talk to and I can get my message across, but the kids, they need to be told what's happening, why is it happening, and also on a broader spectrum, when you go into that area and you change that mindset, what you're also essentially doing is making sure that there any sort of violent tendencies that are starting from that time get subdued over there only. To an extent, you can't do it whole and soul, but you can definitely try and change the mindset over there. Yeah.
Thank you. We have Vijaya here, Dr. Vijaya Javed from RFP as well, and I'd request her to take it further from where Faraz left it.
Hi, so thank you, Ayesha. Sorry for butting in at the moment, but I had to go to another meeting right after this, so I'm talking before the others. So just a quick thing, Rabies Free Pakistan so far has been acting as a technical advisor to the government of Sindh as well. And during this time period, even though we've been seeing a lot of challenges, I do feel we have been, so like Faraz said, community engagement is important. It's equally important to be talking to policymakers who are actually going to move this forward. It's been 70 years that we have been culling, but we haven't moved any far because the rate of production is of a stray dog is way more than that can match up with poisoning and culling it. The only way forward that we see other developing countries have also been doing is TNRV. For this, because I see policymakers and I also see people from WWF here, is for a multidisciplinary approach in which you can have donors, which are unilateral and bilateral donors, talking to the government, giving them money at setting up TNRV programs. We need to have a huge stakeholder, which I see missing in here, is the livestock department. They're the ones who actually have veterinary facilities who can carry out spay and neuter, and they're usually not present at these platforms. They're the ones who have the infrastructure. They're the ones who can carry out mass level spaying and mass level neutering, but they're usually missing when it comes to a policy making dialogue. Another very important stakeholder here is the local government department, especially for provinces, federal also for the ICT territory, because they're the ones who would be catching dogs for TNRV. In our experience for the last 3 years in the Sindh province is that it's really difficult to bring together these two stakeholders and to let them sit on one table, simply because this is not something that private organizations can do. Like Faraz just mentioned, in Sindh alone, we have around 2.5 million dogs. 25 lakh dogs को कोई प्राइवेट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन नहीं कर सकती, और जितनी देर में वो 25 लाख हैं, एक साल में वो 50 लाख हो जाएंगे, उससे अगले साल में वो 100 लाख हो जाएंगे. This is not a pace that private organizations can keep up with. So if there's any policymaker listening to us, please sit with us, please hear our experiences, and please dedicate some money and resources and get the concerned departments on board. Otherwise, this is going to keep going around in circles. And animal activists can do only so much. We can do like 100,000, 10,000, not more than that. In our 3 years, we've been able to only do 10,000 or so, but this is all out of our pocket, all out of our own funding. But unless the government dedicates funds, unless the government dedicates veterinary facilities from the livestock department, जहाँ पे अभी घोड़ा और बकरी और उनकी treatment होती है, these are the people who will later down the line be, your hands who will be conducting the spay and neuter operations, because otherwise nahi hoga. You cannot go out in streets and do them through mobile vans. RFP, which is a private entity, has 2 mobile vans in through hum karte hain. In a day, we can only cater to at max 20 per van. So if we have 2 vans, हम 40 कर लेंगे. हमारी एक वैन में 2 वेट्स होते हैं जिनको हम तकरीबन 40-40 हज़ार रुपए की सैलरी देते हैं. So it's not a sustainable model for private sector. You have a sustainable, I think हमारे पास अगर DC साहब यहाँ हैं, you guys have a sustainable livestock department who has these veterinary facilities, who has these vets, who have these operation theaters जहाँ पे dogs को किया जा सकता है. And then you also have the local government department जिनके पास sanitary workers हैं who can catch dogs after training. So combining these two together, you have a completely sustainable, cost-effective model that other countries like Turkey and Mexico have used. So if anybody wants to do more, you can get in touch with RFP. We are trying to work with Sindh, but because of our own issues, we have, we haven't been able to move ahead. Not our own issues, political issues. Even though हमारे पास PC1 की funding भी आ चुकी है 90 करोड़ की. But because of structures and legal cases, वो आगे नहीं बढ़ पा रही, and because of issues with different departments. I see Faryal has a question.
I just wanted to substantiate and build on what Vijay said, because Vijay, you rightly pointed out the fact that we need capacity building, and you already allocated resources within the provincial as well as federal government. We need to build on them and use them to our advantage. But the biggest problem that you face, that you've rightly pointed out, and for which I need the DC's office, and I'm so grateful that they have joined us as well here, and I need their comment as well as support on it, is that wherever we're trying to make a difference, there are 2-3 other entities which are in place to either implement it or just wash over all the efforts. So like I said, if I take the example of ICT, we have a moratorium in place where stray dogs are not supposed to be culled, and a policy is supposed to be made by the Wildlife Board organization, as well as meanwhile, no animal is supposed to suffer at the hands of any organization or any human person per se. But the problem that we face is that most of these culling actions that are carried out within Islamabad, Rawalpindi, are through the local government organizations, which are MCI and CDA. So their own departments are the ones which actually come over and cull the dogs and take away the bodies, and we don't even know where they're taken. So I wanted to know that I know that we get a lot of support from the DC office, and whenever we raise any concern, there is someone commenting on it, even if no one can actually do something about it right away. But how can we ensure that the government organizations that are supposed to carry out these legislations are the ones which are actually working against these legislations, and they say or end up commenting that our hands are tied? So I do not understand this phenomena where the people that we reach out to, or the people that we actually seek help from, are the ones who feel like helpless, or they say that since it has been called upon us, we're supposed to do it, because we have these certain departments that have their bread and butter associated with culling animals. So I wanted your thought process on it, and I wanted your help in it, for that matter, that how can certain organizations which can help and are actively helping us in this cause can make sure that other organizations, other bodies which are also government mandated, which are also civil bodies, they can also help in, inculcate these they
Yeah,
can
let
help
me
in
quickly
these rules and all
go to
that.
Dr. Ghani, and we will take your question to Mr. Shehryar, the additional district commissioner that we have here today. Dr. Ghani, my question for you remains essentially the same as Faryal. You're the first respondents to cases of cruelty, and you work on donations. So in light of Dr. Vijaya's comments, how can you benefit from the involvement of district government? And as much as Faryal said, how can you benefit from the involvement of district government in reducing the misery of those animals?
Thank you for having me on board. I hope you can hear me. Okay.
Yes, we can.
So the thing is that we are working with very limited capacity and very limited funds. And definitely, we are one of those people who are the first ones to respond to any cruelty cases or hit and run cases, so on and so forth. So the thing is that, first of all, what needs to be done is that the local government, as brought out by the earlier participants, that the local government definitely needs to stop culling first of all, and then they have to work for a solution which is in a humane way that we can control the dog population. And then comes the TNVR. So once we come over to the TNVR, definitely no organization can take on this huge task on their own. So we need funding from the government. We need logistic support from the government, administrative support from the government, because of limited manpower, limited capacity, and limited funds. So this is the only way that it is going to be possible that, if we want to convert us into a humane or a animal loving society, first of all, the government needs to be on board. They need to enforce laws, very strict kind of laws against animal cruelty, that nobody should be allowed to beat up dogs or their puppies, the newborns, and throw them into the fire or something like that. So we have to proceed step by step, and without the help of local government, I don't think it is going to be possible for us.
Thank you. I think Dr. Vijaya wants to add something. If you could please
so,
keep it. Thanks.
Yeah. Just very quickly, actually, local governments are the one who are culling. उन्हीं की तो mindset को हमने बदलना है. It's not about individual cases of animal abuse that are happening. I mean, yes, that should also stop. But what we need to look into is this mass killing that's happening only because the local government has not been presented with the right facts. The same workers who are now poisoning and culling dogs can actually be shifted to those who can actually catch the dogs and then take them to the livestock department. So it's all, again, about mindset, about policies. You don't need a lot of money. You already have the infrastructure that is needed to carry out the TNRV by the government itself. Thank you.
Thank you. I totally agree with your point. Dr. Imran, wildlife is defined as living things, and especially mammals, birds, and fishes that are neither human or domesticated. And stray animals very much fall in the definition. What measures can the district administration take to make Islamabad the model city for animal rights, and how can WWF be useful for it?
Sorry, Ayesha, was that for me? I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Yes,
thank you so much. This is such a wonderful discussion. जहाँ तक WWF का ताल्लुक है, let me start with that. So I do work with WWF, but जो मेरे points होंगे वो मैं अपने उससे दूंगा. WWF का काम है to work for conservation issues, और protected areas में conservation की बात आए, उस पे काम हो रहा है. कुछ चीज़ों पे advice करनी हो government को, तो वो हो रही होती है. तो expertise available है. लेकिन वो expertise आज यहाँ पे जो panel है, इस पे भी मुझे नजर आ रही है. So अगर गवर्नमेंट को कहीं पे इंफॉर्मेशन चाहिए in terms of moving forward vis-a-vis a concrete policy that can address these issues, तो वहाँ पे हमारी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हेल्प कर सकती है और बाकियों की भी कर सकती है. बल्कि पंजाब के अंदर कुछ इनिशिएटिव्स हुए स्ट्रे डॉग्स के साथ, वहाँ पे भी WWF ने इस पे काम किया और कुछ सजेशंस दी हैं. बट आई वांट टू स्टेप बैक हियर एंड आस्क दिस क्वेश्चन कि जब मैं इसको देख रहा था, और मैं इस पैनल पे, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर हैविंग मी हियर, as an environmentalist, I was looking at the laws that exist. तो जो law आता है वो 1890 का आता है पाकिस्तान में, और वो 1890, this is essentially pre-independence colonial era law. इंडिया में इसको अपडेट कर दिया गया, बाकी जगहों पे कर दिया गया, लेकिन पाकिस्तान में अभी भी वही है, prevention of cruelty to animals 1890. So there are two questions here. Number one, why is it that the law has not been updated? और secondly, जो question है जो कि मैं खुद अपने आप से पूछ रहा था, वो ये कि do we need a law to prevent cruelty against animals? अगर हमें एक law चाहिए animals के खिलाफ कोई ऐसे एक्शन से क्रूएल्टी प्रिवेंट करने के लिए, तो फिर what does that say about us? So this is the big picture, right? कि वो हमारे बारे में क्या कहता है as Muslims, as Pakistani, as individuals who are living in the 21st century, और वो हमारी broader governance के बारे में क्या कहता है. Yes, जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट गवर्नमेंट्स हैं उनके पास एक हुक्म जारी होता है कि जी आपने इसे डील करना है, तो वो जाके मैस किलिंग करेंगे, they'll get rid of the animals, but that's the option they have. उसमें उनको चॉइसेस नहीं दी जाती, उसके लिए उनको रिसोर्सेज हैं, उसके लिए ब्रॉडर जो सोसाइटी के ऊपर जब हम बात करते हैं तो वो सपोर्ट सिस्टम एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता. एक इंडिविजुअल के पास वो हुक्म आता है and then he goes and implements it. Obviously they're not talking to the experts here, जितने भी यहाँ पे माशाल्लाह लोग हैं जिनको इतनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग है. And why is it that that's not happening? So that's another question. So I have more questions than I have answers. अब बात ये आती है कि अब आपने मूव फॉरवर्ड करना है तो किस तरीके से करेंगे. एकेडेमिया को इन्वॉल्व करें जैसे कि कहा गया, एनजीओ से बात करें जिस तरह की एक्सपर्टीज मौजूद है, गवर्नमेंट में लोग ऐसे हैं जो कि इस बात को समझते हैं, उनको इन्वॉल्व करें. यस, पब्लिक लाइफ में भी इंडिविजुअल्स हैं जो कि इस चीज़ों को नहीं समझते, तो उसमें आपको रिलीजियस इंस्टीट्यूशंस के साथ बात करनी पड़ेगी. क्या हमारे फ्राइडे सर्मन्स में स्ट्रे एनिमल्स पे कभी बात होती है? नहीं होती. अगर कभी होती हो तो शायद शाज़ो नादर होती हो. मैंने कभी नहीं सुनी है, I've talked to people और वो नहीं होती. So एक सोसाइटल लेवल पर हमें इस पे सोचना पड़ेगा, और तब जाकर हम लोग इस कहीं पे आ सकते हैं कि किसको किस तरीके से आगे लेके जाएं. इस वक्त जो इशू है, दैट लम्हा फिक्रिया कह लें उसको, एक बहुत ही वरिंग किस्म की प्रॉब्लम है, वो ये है कि वैल्यू ऑफ लाइफ, ह्यूमन लाइफ पे भी हम कह सकते हैं कि क्या वेदर दैट्स देयर और नॉट, हम कितना उसको एड्रेस कर रहे हैं, लेकिन एनिमल लाइफ की वैल्यू क्या है इस मुल्क में, and what does that say about us? That's the bigger question, and once we come to a conclusion in this regard, then perhaps we'll be able to move forward. Recommendations or your policy measures up तक colleagues ने दिए हैं, they're perfect, they're really good, but why is it that there is a disconnect between what's being said here and what the government is doing, or what I as an individual is doing when it comes to a particular stray animal? Why aren't we taking the measures to address this huge policy gap when it comes to such an important issue? I'm really happy कि आप लोगों ने initiative लिया इस पे बात करने का, but we need to have a lot more of these conversations before कोई इसमें हमें कोई खातिर ख्वाह बेहतरी नजर आएगी, because इस पे knowledge का फुकदान है, interest का फुकदान है. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Imran. I'm aware that I'm keeping Mr. Shehryar waiting for a very long time, but Dr. Vijaya is with us despite being down with COVID, and that's how passionate she is about the subject, and she wants to respond to Dr. Imran, so I'll give her a floor, but please be very brief because we have to go to Mr. Shehryar and we only have 15 minutes left.
Okay. Just very quickly, I think हम इसको गलत एंगल से देख रहे हैं. फॉर अ कंट्री जिसकी 220 मिलियन की आबादी है, जो अपने इंसानों को नहीं पाल पा रही, यू एक्चुअली थिंक दे, आई एम सॉरी, आई एम एन एनिमल एक्टिविस्ट, आई एम वन ऑफ द बिगेस्ट एनिमल एक्टिविस्ट्स, बट ये एंगल यहाँ नहीं काम करेगा. द ओनली एंगल दैट्स गोना वर्क हियर is from the rabies prevention point of view. If we make it very simple, okay, number of dogs ज़्यादा number of dog means ज़्यादा number of dog bites. ज़्यादा number of dog bites mean कि इंसानों में rabies ज़्यादा होगा. If we make rabies a notifiable disease like Faisal Sultan is trying to, and which we're pushing him for कि वो उस पे काम करें और उसको surveillance में डालें, and instead कि हम wait करें कि dog bite करे to a human and the human needs to go and get a vaccination ताकि उसकी जान बचे, is it not much better that we make it a vaccine preventable disease in the animal? उससे animal भी बचेगा, animal की आबादी भी बचेगी, and you're saving 2 lives. You're not just saving the dogs, you're also saving humans from it. So again, I'm sorry, but for a poverty-stuck country like Pakistan, जिसकी आबादी ही इतनी ज़्यादा है, so to answer back to what Dr. Imran Khalid was talking about, जिस country में इंसानों की needs पूरी नहीं हो रही, आपको लगता है कि यहाँ पे dogs के ऊपर policy बनाई जाएगी? So the only way we can actually, move it ahead, where other countries like Turkey and Sri Lanka and Mexico with demographic features like ours have moved ahead, is only when they've made it a notifiable disease. There has been no culling. Countries at a Supreme Court level will take out bylaws on animal protection and move the entire anti-culling campaign to a TNRV, and animal birth control and anti-vaccination. Thank you so much, Ayesha.
Vijaya, Faryal, if you could be quick as well, please.
Actually, I'd rather hear the DC's comment first, and then I would proceed with my comment on Dr. Imran's.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shehryar, for waiting for so long. We all had a lot to say about what the district governments needs to do, and while we want to hear from you what all sounds implementable in this discussion, we'd also like to hear from you what you are already doing for the issue and how the right activist community and SDPI as a think tank can help in this regard.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Hopefully I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for the wonderful initiative. I mean, for me, it's the first time here in Islamabad in the past 2 months that there's something about the animal rights. So I'm excited, number one. Number two, there were so many discussion points, like there was point about the legal framework. And I think we're very much clear that there is a legal framework. We have high court judgments. We have where IWMB was mandated with coming up with a policy. I'm also part of IWMB. So I think this is something I would be putting up in the next board meeting. And after that, I would also say that we have animal cruelty laws here as well. Now, for me here, despite the COVID thing, the spike in the COVID, and probably we are all busy with COVID response right now. The reason is that administration is fully committed to the cause, number one. Number two, like probably Faryal pointed to the fact, Vijaya pointed to the fact that there should be other departments on board. So I would say when Deputy Commissioner Office is here, that automatically means that ICT administration is here, which means we would be looking into what we have to say to the CDA, to the vet department. We have 4 vet hospitals, 9 vet centers here. We have the local government department here. So we are fully committed. We have all the resources. We have the necessary mandate, and we are very much interested right now in requesting all the members to basically come up with a strategy that district government would be more than willing to apply. We have the sanitation department here. If it's about the training of our guys, that would be helpful. But the thing that I suggest here is that we probably should just devise a mechanism in the next 1 week. And through that mechanism, we should all district administration would love to start this campaign, keeping in view all the animal rights parameters that have to be looked upon. So I would say the discussion was like a mix of philosophy and practicality. Here in the district administration, we go more by, the do's and don'ts. So we are very much interested with all the policymakers here that we would sit with them, devise a strategy, a short-term strategy right now, and just try to just implement that strategy in the coming week, or probably let's say from February. So we are very much excited. We are very much on board, and district administration is more than willing to just take all the feedback and implement it in the field.
Thank you, Shehryar. I'm extremely proud of the fact that our district administration takes the issue seriously and are open to new ideas on the subject. And we look forward to working together towards a better environment and a more empathetic society for for our co-inhabitants. Unfortunately, the DC cannot join us for the closing. I'll go to Faryal, but I also want to take Dr. Ghani's comments on Mr. Shehryar's remarks because he was very brief and we couldn't give him enough time. If Dr. Ghani is still with us.
Yes, I'm here. So the thing is that we have been in touch with the Deputy Commissioner of Islamabad, and it was very kind of him indeed to take interest in whatever we are planning with Grana. Actually, Grana is a well-known real estate company, and they have offered a CSR project with us, helping us with the TNVR campaign and subsequently making a animal shelter in Islamabad, which is going to be a state-of-the-art, one of its kind animal shelter in Islamabad, hopefully very soon. So we are working on that as well. So the thing is that since we have a very limited capacity and very limited staff with us, so we needed somebody to support us for taking on this campaign in Islamabad, making it a model city. Since the literacy rate of Islamabad is far better than other cities of Pakistan, and since having the DC office on board, it is going to be very easy for us to convince people not to kill the dogs or not to get rid of them in a inhuman manner. So it's very, indeed very heartening to listen to Mr. Shehryar, Arif, that they are in full support of us. And honestly speaking, I never had an idea that they have that veterinary facilities on board in Islamabad, because the only doctor that was available in DC office that I met previously in a meeting, they were already very heavily committed with the livestock activities going on in and around rural Islamabad. So the thing is that hopefully we also plan that we are going to make portable small houses and huts for the stray population of dogs, which is affected by calamities and rainfall and harsh realities of weather that they have to withstand, and nobody's there to look after them or feed them. And subsequently, we will have a shelter as well, where we are going to place all the dogs that cannot fend for themselves due to terminal disabilities or any kind of health issues. And it is going to be a TNVR facility as well, where we will take it into 3 phases. That is how we plan to take it on. And the sectors that are most affected, and where the complainants, we have the most complainants in those sectors, we are going to take on it on in phase 1. So this is how we plan to go about it. And in 3 phases, hopefully in 3 to 4 years, we are going to take on this task. And I'm sure that, if we have full cooperation of DC office, it is going to be very easy for us, and we'll be able to achieve 100% results. Thank you.
This is very heartening. Thank you so much. Faryal, just your quick closing remarks, please.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to be brief, and I have a few questions for Shehryar. First of all, Shehryar, it was very heartening to hear from the DC office that you guys are actually not only looking into it, but making things happen for us as well. And you have these facilities that you want to use and make positive change in the society. A few quick questions. The departments that you mentioned, like the sanitation department and MCI and CDA, these are the ones which are actually carrying out the culling campaigns, and the ones who we have to fight day in, day out on the streets as an individual when it comes to, their bans coming in and all. So do you have anything in written or any policy or any amendment or anything that we can actually put up and show to the societies and show to the masses so that they can, be aware of how the district government or how the local government is supporting the cause, not going against it? Because it's people from the same bodies who actually come up and do these things. So whenever we ask them, you're not allowed to do that, we have a legislation, we have a moratorium in place, they say that it has been ordered by, I don't want to take the names, but the head of the particular department. So, that's where we become, speechless, and that's where we are like tired like that. So we need something from your end as soon as you have a policy in place, or as soon as you have something in written, so that we can show it to these people when we are working on ground, that we have certain legislations and certain government bodies backing us on this, and because they don't take the court order seriously either. So something from your office could be very fruitful and very heartening for all of us who work on ground to use in our day-to-day work. Secondly, you mentioned these government facilities, which was very heartening and surprising for me to find out that there are certain 9 centers that you mentioned for, TNVR and other things that we can use. Like Dr. Ghani mentioned, that people who are working on ground are not aware of them. So if you could make the public aware of these facilities and, make this public knowledge, so that we, whenever we have any rescues, like Ayesha mentioned it as well, it's not sustainable anymore to get them vaccinated, get them treated, put them back to where we pick them up from, because the cost of medicine, especially for strays and for all these animals, because it is not regulated, is very, very high in this day and time. So it would be very helpful if you could make this knowledge of public awareness as well. And my third point would be that, like you mentioned, you're on the IWMB board as well. And as you are aware, that that the judge, Manila, he mandated the board in 2020 to come up with the policy while the moratorium is in place, that no dog is going to be culled, but we're going to come up with the Islamic preaching ki in light mein hote hue policy to make sure, that we are treating their population correctly. I'm part of that panel too, but nothing has come out of it. It's been 1.5 years since that judgment was passed. And I'm actually looking forward to something. You mentioned that you're going to put it forward in the next board meeting. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from, you guys on this, because again, there has been radio silence. A lot of animals died in the process. A few of them were fortunate enough to fly out, but the rest are still, in the same peril. So we need these things from your legislative body and from your office, कि आप लोग हमें अगर ये चीजें publicly establish करा देंगे, इनकी awareness बता देंगे, you will tell us wherever these institutes are where we can take the animals and, get them treated for free. Like Dr. Ghani mentioned and Vajia mentioned, we have limited resources, but we want to do this good and we need your help with it. And if you guys are more than willing, which I'm really happy to hear and see, then we really need to leverage on this and collaborate together to make it work. That's all I wanted to say.
I just quickly want to add, I have a small request, or rather idealistic request from the Additional Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Shehryar Arif. Would it be possible for the administration to declare Islamabad as a sister city to Istanbul in regards to animal rights, and what steps do we need to take for the purpose? And we'd close after his comments. Thank you.
So first of all, quickly, when we say we have vet centers, for example, so the most important point right now is that I think that this dialogue, it should have some a framework that you would be sending to the district administration and we would apply them. So right now, for example, we have 9 centers, and if someone would just walk into those centers, probably the guys there, with the lack of capacity they have, they may refer you, they may give you certain animal medicines, for example, but they won't be in the position if you take an animal and say you need it for spaying and neutering, maybe their response would be no. So what I'm saying is that we have the necessary infrastructure, number one, but we need its capacity building. And that would be clear once the outcome of this dialogue is shared with me. So then I would have my review with my team, probably inviting some of you here, and then coming up with solid SOPs or probably solid do's and don'ts that could be implemented. Number one. Number two, I would be taking this matter to the IWMB. We have our meeting on 25th. So now I would be including this as an agenda point. It was not an agenda point, but yesterday when I was reading the court ruling for this meeting, so I just got to know about this. I recently joined Islamabad, so apologies for me not knowing about all this. So I would be putting it in IWMP, and we would certainly be coming up with certain points of strategy or maybe a teamwork on this. 2 points. Number three, now, just writing a notification is not a big thing. I mean, Islamabad administration could certainly just write a notification and people would know it's from Deputy Commissioner Office or Deputy Commissioner Islamabad. The most important thing here is that we need a certain mechanism through which we would make these people understand, because as probably Vajia pointed out, that there are so many issues, where people are not concerned about animal rights, but they're more concerned about animal bite issues and all this stuff. So we have to be careful. Like it's more of an awareness come, practicality that has to be applied. And the last thing, it's a wonderful thing to have like the sister city initiative with Istanbul. But for this, if you share the SOPs with me, like what were the steps that Istanbul has done. Definitely, we would create a framework. Let's say we would take 1 month or 2 months, and with your collaboration, all of your support, we could certainly, we need to implement some of the things before we claim that we are a sister city to Istanbul on the animal right issue. So if you could just provide me with the framework, and then we can have some meetings or discussions with all the stakeholders and come up with certain implementable points. I think after that thing, probably 1 or 2 months, we would be in a position where we would portray Islamabad as a sister city to Istanbul. Yep, thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Wajiha just messaged that they have a framework first in which we can implement in Islamabad, and I'll have her share it with you. I can exchange your numbers. Thank you so much for this discussion. Thank you so much for your input. And once again, I'm extremely proud of the fact that our district administration is taking it so seriously and they're so committed to the cause. Inshallah, we'll work together on it more, and we'll coordinate with the district administration and try to ease the lives of our animals as much as we can. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you,
Thank you so
everyone.
much for having us over. Jazakallah.
Thank you all. Thank you.